Outfield Preview Part 2 up next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Thursday, February 15th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers, and on Part 1 of our Outfield Preview, we talked about strategy and our favorites to draft. So today, let's do sleepers, breakouts, and busts in the outfield. Chris, you are up first with a sleeper.
Yeah, I think you and I both like Tyler O'Neill a lot, but I said I was doing it first, so I'll take him. And I think the biggest thing is just I was pretty skeptical of him the past couple of years. Injuries have been a really big problem. He hasn't come close to matching the 2021 upside, but I think the move to Boston really helps his chances because you look at just the park shift alone. O'Neill is someone who has underperformed his expected stats over the last couple of seasons, and that's not rare at Busch Stadium. Right-handed batters over the past 5 seasons underperformed their expected WOBA by 15 points over the past 5 seasons collectively. At Fenway, right-handed batters over the past 5 seasons have overperformed their expected WOBA by about 12 points. So if all that happens is that Tyler O'Neill goes from being someone who underperforms his expected stats to just matching his expected stats, you would expect a big step forward. You would expect him to hit more like 255, 260. You'd expect 25 plus home runs. We know he's a very good athlete. So I do think this move to Boston should help Tyler O'Neill unlock some of the upside that's been missing the past couple of seasons. And his price remains very, very low. So I like taking the chance outside of the top 250 in ADP right now.
Yeah, ADP is 256 as the 57th outfielder off the board. Completely agree on Tyler O'Neill. A sleeper for me, and you made this point on our full-length podcast, Chris. Every year we have players, the fantasy community, that we're excited about as breakouts. It doesn't happen, and then we just kind of throw them away. I think the same can be said for Lars Nootbaar, who I still have as a sleeper. I think he's a legit good hitter. He's got a great eye at the plate. It helps him play up in both a roto and in a head-to-head points league. 14 homers, 11 steals last year in only 117 games. It remains to be seen if he can actually stay on the field for an entire season, so I get that concern. But if he does, 20-plus homers, 15 steals, likely to bat in the top 3 in that Cardinals lineup, I think that lineup in general is going to bounce back. So lots of potential for counting stats. I still really like Lars Nootbaar as a sleeper this year. How about a breakout, Chris? Who you got?
I really like Riley Greene. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's a really talented young player who's had a really, really tough time since getting to the majors. Remember, 2022, he's getting ready to make his debut. He's a top 5 consensus prospect. I think last game of the spring, he fouls a ball off his foot, breaks his foot, has his start to the season delayed, struggled hitting the ball in the air, struggled pulling the ball. Improved on both of those skills in his second season, despite dealing with another couple of injuries. So I think that's a really good sign. 288 batting average, 289 expected batting average. That is one of the best marks in baseball, despite a 27% strikeout rate, because he hits the ball so well, hits a ton of line drives. I think that park, it's going to hold back the power somewhat. It is still pretty deep in the power alleys, despite them moving the fences in. But I think if Riley Greene stays healthy this season, 285 batting average, 25 homers, good RBI and run production, maybe even 15 steals with his athleticism. I think that's all very much on the table for a 23-year-old hitter who's just starting to grow into who he's going to become.
Look at us, Chris. Right back to the well last year. We were in on Nootbaar and Riley Greene. We're right back in on the same players. Breakout for me is going to be Jarren Duran with the Boston Red Sox. Last year, hit 295 with 8 homers and 24 steals in 102 games. He lowered his strikeout rate. He has elite zone contact rate. You love to see that from a young player. He traded in some ground balls for more line drives last year, which helped with the batting average. He improved against lefties. It was a really small sample size. I hope the Red Sox give him at least the opportunity to play against lefties early on, and if he succeeds, he just kind of runs away with that and is just the everyday leadoff hitter for the Red Sox. And if that happens, I think we can get a Josh Lowe light type season here from Jarren Duran. The ADP is 228.8. That's on the rise. In drafts that I've done, he's going inside the top 200 a lot of the time, around pick 175. So if you want him, you have to be aggressive, but I do think there's big upside here with Jarren Duran. How about a bust, Chris, a player that you are avoiding?
Yeah, there's a point in most of my drafts where a lot of my bust picks, I could see myself drafting them, but Lane Thomas, I think I'm about 80 spots lower in my rankings than his ADP. So I can't see any scenarios where I'm going to end up with Lane Thomas on my teams. Look, I think there's enough power and enough speed that Lane Thomas is not going to just have the bottom fall out for fantasy. I think like 20-ish homers, 20-ish steals, maybe 25 steals. I think that's possible for him. But what we saw last season was a really, really good first half. And then he collapsed in the second half. Still hit for power, but the batting average fell to 223, OBP 274. We're talking about a guy who 726 career OPS before last season. I think it was 705 after the All-Star break. In the minors, 755. Before the All-Star break, it was like 870. That's clearly the outlier here. And I think what you're going to see with Lane Thomas is you're going to have to spend a 10th round pick on him, maybe a little earlier in some drafts, for a guy who's probably going to be a batting average liability, who's probably not going to score a ton of runs or drive in a ton of runs in a bad lineup. 20 homers, 20 stolen bases, that's valuable. But if he's dragging you down everywhere else, I really think Lane Thomas is going to be a bust this season.
His ADP is 123.6 as the 28th outfielder off the board. And a name that I'll be avoiding this season is TJ Friedl. If you want to find out why, then you can listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye!